let's take a look at this Group 3, guys. There are some interesting matchups here. Big Ten finally coming onto the schedules. This may be when you actually start tuning in and watching these bowl games. Let's start with the Insight Bowl. David Nows, you're the only person here that picked Iowa to win this game over Missouri. Certainly Missouri was the favorite before the whole Iowa team got suspended. But now that the whole Iowa team got suspended, do you still think they can pull it off?
Well, and I did make these picks a week ago. Far less confident now. But to justify my pick, I will say that Ricky Stanzi has only thrown 4 interceptions all year. Of course, we always talk about the infamous Stanzi ball on this show, and I really don't think he's going to make the big mistake. They've lost 5 games, but he's only thrown 4 picks, so that's obviously not the reason they've had a disappointing season. I think Ricky Stanzi sucks it up. It'll be another senior quarterback making big plays. I'll take Iowa still.
Scott, Blaine Gabbert, big boy. He can run around, too. Missouri 10-2, only losses to Nebraska and Texas Tech by 7 combined points. This is a good team.
It is, and I think this is something we're going to see later on as we continue through the show. The Big 12 has been very lucky because all of the other power conferences, the SEC, the Pac-10, the Big 10, have 2 teams in BCS bowls. The Big 12 doesn't. So all their teams are playing up a bowl, if you will, playing a team that is not in the spot that you'd expect. This is a typical matchup. Missouri 14th in the nation, 10-2, Iowa 7-5. I have a very tough time seeing Iowa winning this game.
All right, let's move on to another Big Ten matchup. It's Illinois and Baylor in the Texas Bowl on December 29th. Adam, you went with the Fighting Illini in this one, despite them losing their last game to Fresno State, and the game before that, I guess, was a big win against Northwestern.
Right, both teams are kind of coming in a little cold. Baylor lost their last 3, Illinois 3 out of the last 4, but Michael Ashore really came on strong at the end of the season, and that bodes well against Baylor's lackluster rush defense. Their defense 96th in the country. We watch Michigan guys all year with a defense that's ranked that low, and you saw how the results turn out, typically not in their favor. Illinois' defense will be able to step up. Might see them have a tough time with Robert Griffin as they did with Denard Robinson, but again, I think it comes down to Michael Ashore and Illinois' ability to run the ball that will help them win this game.
Right, basically a home game, Scott, for Baylor in this one. But the way Denard Robinson completely and totally took over that game here at the Big House, you'd have to think that Baylor's the favorite.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to think. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see Corey Legit, a very good defensive end on Illinois, see if he can try to contain Robert Griffin, but it's going to be tough. Robert Griffin, an explosive athlete up there in the Denard Robinson category. And also Baylor, this is a huge game for their program. They're not in very many bowl games. And they're in Texas. They're going to come out. They're going to be ready to play. I see Baylor, the emotion carrying them through to win this game.
All right, another bowl in Texas, the Alamo Bowl, Oklahoma State and Arizona. Oklahoma State with a top 5 offense. But, David, you went with the Wildcats. Poor K, senor. Poor K.
I did. And the reason I did go with the Wildcats is because not many teams can match Whedon to Blackman. But Arizona can. They have Foles to Kreiner, and as Adam Brewster pointed out, Nick Foles does have sick flow. I do think it's going to be a shootout in this one. I really think that Arizona is going to have a little more firepower, and I think they're going to win this one.
I don't know. Making your pick based on the quarterback's hair, success rate usually pretty low. Now, we move on to the Military Bowl, and let's be honest, no one really cares about this game. A very mediocre Maryland team, and then the definition of mediocre, a 6-6 East Carolina team. But I can guarantee you that 50,000 Pirates are going to show up for the Military Bowl. Take a look.
Take warning of this vessel. Steer clear ye of her hull. Tread carefully the waters of the crossbones and the skull. For if you choose to challenge the pirate's sword, dear mate, it's best ye know the strongest foes have met the darkest fate. Thunder crashes in the night, another story told of the spirit of the pirate and his purple and his gold. Men have tried and men have failed to raid the pirate's chest. Both day and night with swords and might the pirates do contest. See, this ground you've reached is sacred, 'tis here you don't belong. For you've stepped into a nation 50,000 pirates strong. This is our house, this is our state, this is our nation, the Pirate Nation.
Well, I wish that we could make our picks just based on how cool teams' intros were, but we can't. everyone agrees that Maryland's
Yeah.
going to win this game. East Carolina, a bad Conference USA team. And finally in this group, the Pinstripe Bowl to be played at Yankee Stadium, which will be pretty cool. Not as cool as a hockey game at the Big House, though. Syracuse and Kansas State. I'm going with the orange. Scott went with the orange as well, but Adam and David went with Kansas State. I was going to make some like Manhattan to Manhattan joke, but
They're in the
Yankee
Bronx.
Stadium's in the Bronx, so I couldn't do it. Anyway, let's move on though to Group 4. There are some BCS, hopefuls in this group.
Your Group 4 bowl picks. North Carolina and Tennessee head to Nash Vegas for the Music City Bowl. Southern Methodist Mustangs hope to divide and conquer Army in the Armed Forces Bowl. Taylor Martinez and Nebraska Cornhuskers go for a rematch against the Washington Huskies in the Holiday Bowl. It's Cattle vs. Jungle Cat as the USF Bulls play the Clemson Tigers in the Meineke Car Care Bowl. And finally, the Liberty Bowl has Mark Richt's job on the line as Georgia faces off with the UCF Knights. Your Group 4 bowl picks.
1. All right, we're here with our Group 4 expert now, Dhruv. And Dhruv, you have some upsets picked in this matchup. So
I do.
You have some explaining to do. All right, let's start with the Music City Bowl, North Carolina, Tennessee. This game will be played in Nashville, so in Tennessee, closer
That is true.
To Tennessee than to North Carolina. That's some geography lesson for y'all. But and look, and a lingual lesson too, because I said y'all. But you picked Tennessee to win this game, and they're definitely the underdogs.
I did. Part of the reason was because it's near their hometown. But both the teams haven't really had a great season. North Carolina having a lot of suspended players. They did have their quarterback step up, TJ Yates, and same with Tennessee. Their quarterback stepped up too. A young quarterback, freshman Tyler Bray. But I really think it's going to be a quarterback duel. Both defenses are looking strong, but kind of like a toss-up almost. And I'm going to go with Tennessee coming in with a 4-game winning streak. Should pull this one out.
Right, yeah, momentum key in this game. Also, probably, maybe not the 2 best uniforms in the nation, but they're up there at least, in my opinion.
Definitely.
All right, now how about the Armed Forces Bowl, Dhruv? You got Army and SMU. SMU, the favorite in this game, coached by June Jones, formerly of Hawaii.
That is true.
Lots of points for SMU, but you go with Army this one.
I'm going with the Army. Even though this is played in Dallas, essentially a home game for SMU.
Right.
After that 25 years of having terrible seasons, they came back last year with a bowl game. But I think this year it's looking Army's way. They have a really strong running game, 9th best in the season in the country.
Right.
And the 2-headed monster in the backfield might be able to pull this one out.
Okay, now let's move on to the Holiday Bowl. Now the Holiday Bowl has it always seems like it's a bad game, at least in my opinion. Like a matchup that's supposed to be good and then disappoints. This one isn't supposed to be good. Nebraska, Washington, these 2 teams played earlier in the year, as you know, and Nebraska just destroyed the Huskies. Not even close.
Terrible game. They won 56-21.
Right.
And that's part of the reason why I'm going with Nebraska in this one. They have a strong quarterback, Martinez, and it's not even a close call. Nebraska being ranked top 10 for part of the season, I really think Nebraska should pull this one out.
Right, Washington limping into the game at 6-6. All right, now how about the Meineke Car Care Bowl, Dhruv? We got South Florida and Clemson. Again, one of these ones that, like 10 people are going to watch the game. But 2 evenly matched teams at least.
That is true, but Clemson has played some strong teams as compared to South Florida, being in a weaker conference. I still think South Florida's defense is going to be better than Clemson's. They both have strong defenses, not that great of offenses, but I think South Florida should be able to pull this one out after a pretty good season.
And probably the best coach name in the country, Dabo Swinney,
Definitely.
Clemson's head coach. And Kyle Parker, their quarterback, plays both baseball and football. Just random, interesting tidbits. And finally, I think the most interesting game in your group, Dhruv, the Liberty Bowl, UCF and Georgia. Georgia struggled, all these rumors about Mark Richt potentially being fired. But the last couple of games, they kind of put it together.
They have. Georgia off to a terrible start with a 4-game losing streak in the beginning of the season. They did come back with a win against Tennessee and against Georgia Tech later in the season. And A.J. Green, Aaron Murray, I just don't see Georgia losing in this one. A.J. Green should have a great game. This could be his last game as a college football player, and I really think Georgia should win this one.
Well, I already tried to go pro with the whole selling his bowl jersey thing from last year. I don't think he'll do it this year.
I don't know about this year, but
Liberty Bowl jerseys, I don't think there's a great big market for them. Yeah. Anyway, thanks a lot, Drew, for your picks. Now let's take a look at my picks, Scott, David, and what Adam has to say as well. All right, guys, moving on to Section 4 now, just knocking these games out. There are some intriguing matchups here. Let's start with the Music City Bowl. I really think this could be a good game. North Carolina and Tennessee. Everyone agrees on North Carolina, Scott. But North Carolina had all the suspensions at the beginning of the year. We're thinking about doing something significant this year. Mm-hmm. Tennessee will be nearly at home, just 2-hour drive.
Yeah.
Why North Carolina, though?
Well, I mean, I think it's a lot about what you just said. A lot of those players are back now, and they're a solid football team, really. I mean, if you look at throughout the year, they had all these struggles with people being out. Now that they have their full team, they're a much stronger team than Tennessee. Tennessee was not very good this year. They really sort of backed their way into a bowl just at 6-6.
Yeah, and a lot of wins against bad opponents, and then they played for a half with Oregon, and then just got blown away. Mm-hmm. Derek Dooley definitely feeling the heat there at Tennessee, even though he's only, it hasn't been there very long after replacing Lane Kiffin.
To a place like Tennessee, you got to produce quick.
Right. No parallels to any situations that might hit closer to home. Armed Forces Bowl, Army and SMU. Army just got crushed by Navy. Everyone agrees that June Jones and the SMU revival here is going to continue in that game. Also, everyone agrees in the Holiday Bowl, but David, we'll go to you just to get your standard complaints about this matchup. Nebraska and Washington played earlier this year, and Nebraska handily defeated Washington. Why would you match up these two teams again?
Well, there's absolutely no reason to match up these two teams. The first time they played, it was 56-21 in favor of the Cornhuskers. I don't see this one being quite as similar, but it's still going to be a blowout. Nebraska's a 10-win team playing down in a bowl that they probably shouldn't be playing in. And then you have Washington, who's 6-6, not very good, and has already been blown out by his team. I don't think Jake Locker's going to do a whole lot, and I don't see Washington standing much of a chance.
But Jake Locker is going to be the #1 overall pick this year in the draft.
Don't count on it.
Don't count on it. Meineke Car Care Bowl in Charlotte, always the least attended bowl by the eyeball test, in my opinion. USF and Clemson. Adam, you went with Clemson, a struggling 6-6 Clemson team, over the 7-5 South Florida Bulls.
Yeah, really took a big hit this year with the loss of C.J. Spiller. Offensive production went down. Both teams, though, with mediocre offenses but pretty good defenses. I think Clemson's defense has been a little more tested, though, going throughout the year rather than USF's, which, going through the Big East schedule, I mean, you could put a high school in the Big East and they'd probably win a game. And at the same time, you also have to look at the fact the game is almost a home game for Clemson. I do think that despite Kyle Parker's inconsistency, Clemson has shown they can play before. They almost beat Auburn.
It's probably going to be a low-scoring, pretty boring game, to be honest. Kyle Parker, Clemson's quarterback, a baseball guy that plays football, just like Wilson. I forget his first name for NC State. Russell Wilson, right. We'll talk about it a little bit later. But let's really bore down on this last game of this group, guys, because this is a really intriguing matchup. You wouldn't usually think that Georgia in a Liberty Bowl would be interesting, but they're playing Central Florida. I go with Georgia, so do you, David Nows. But Scott, you went with Central Florida. The Knights, Kevin Smith's alma mater. Why Central Florida?
I mean, it was a tough pick. I just don't like Georgia as a football team this year.
You just don't like them. Okay.
And Central Florida wins Conference USA, maybe not the greatest conference, but still 10-3. They showed they could consistently win ball games. They had that experience. Georgia at 6-6, I don't think they can hang. I mean, it would be an upset just because you have a Conference USA team beating a perennial power like Georgia. But I really think Central Florida has the ability to win that Georgia maybe can't quite capitalize on.
All right, David, you went with Georgia. Georgia has scored 41, 43, 44, 31, 55, 31, and 42 points in their last 6 games. Aaron Murray has found his niche with A.J. Green. Is that why you went with Georgia?
Well, I look at these two defenses, and Georgia's number 29 in the country, UCF's number 17, but Georgia's played a lot tougher schedule in the SEC. You look at who has the big play threat, and it's Georgia with A.J. Green. I really think that's going to be the difference. It's going to be a close one, but when you have a home run hitter like A.J. Green, you really have a good chance to win a ball game like this. That's why I picked Georgia.
You know, UCF nearly beat Kansas State and NC State. So this should be a pretty interesting matchup. We need to go to commercial break, but coming back on the other side, Catholics versus conflict. A conflict between Catholics and convicts. Stay tuned. Jeez.